Hey YouTubers, this is Lonnie Clark again, Nuts for Art, and I'm here with my friend Louisa Hamachek. And she wants to make another video. We came into my office, we're using the webcam. The idea is that we can make kind of a longer video because we've only used my cell phone, which is very limited. So, speaking of cell phones, hand me my cell phone, we'll turn the sound down. We don't want to be interrupted in the middle of her very important, presentation.
Ramble.
Yeah. I mean, she has some really great information that she does want to share.
Yeah.
Her life mission, or one of her life missions, is to shut down the Columbia Generating Station. And so we're pressing on, man. We're doing what we can do. We're going to post this video, and we are encouraging people to connect with us and link up with us at EcoArts. Is that
my name? louisa.ecoarts. I'm an artist for the earth.
At
gmail.com.
louisa.ecoarts@gmail.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in becoming an activist, you live in the Northwest, and closing down the Columbia Generating Station is your life mission, she's your gal.
Or it's one of your things. It's just every resident should participate in this efficient shutdown of it safely.
Efficient. Let's cross our fingers we can get them to do that.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain what it is you wanted to share with them today?
Okay. I just went on a journey to Seattle, and I went with my daughter on a mission that she wanted me to drive. And
I'm going to move her over.
Bye, you guys. I'm out of here.
I wanted her to be in.
Anyways, so it was an experiment too. She needed me to be the driver, and I saw that it's very easy to get to Seattle from Eugene. And there's 3 cities, and we went to Portland, we had to do some things there, and then we went up to Seattle. And I didn't get tired as a single driver, so I'd like to say Cascadia is easily connectable. We should have meetings, and that's the first beginning of my kind of ecological geography tour, focusing on radioactive things of last weekend. So in Portland, I enjoyed the neighborhood of St. John's, which is there was a Polish community center, and they had a lot of delicious foods that were prepared with the recipes of Poland, and I'm Czech, and it was fun. And they had a deli, kind of a grocery store with Polish products, and then I remembered Chernobyl, and I thought, I don't want anything canned that's fruit, I don't want anything from Poland. 1986, the cloud from the Ukraine and Chernobyl blew over Poland and to Sweden and Scotland. So don't buy any food from those parts of the world.
They still can't eat their own cattle and their sheep or any of that.
It looked
stuff.
so good, and it had all these Z's and its names of everything. It was so great. So anyways, I was like, I'll take pictures of it, but I'm not going to eat it. And then we went north, and in Seattle, I went to I looked at the newspaper of things to do, and one thing was the Northwest African American Museum in Seattle, in the east side. And I went there, and it's in an old big brick school that the Interstate 90 had closed down the school in a black neighborhood, and these activists took over the building and worked with the Urban League. So now it's a lot of apartments, as well as this great African Americans of the Northwest Museum. And they wonder, how did we get here, and who came? And some came on the Oregon Trail, and some came in different ways with Amtrak, and all kinds of different reasons. And they are trying to connect their roots there, and they have a genealogy department to connect the Northwest people. Because the Northwest has been, even though it's the land of the free away from the American government when it was being set up, it soon was made into the states of Oregon and Washington. The original people wanted to come out here away from all the laws of the land during the Civil War time. And so it became this mixed thing of whether it was where black people could be, where it was the land of the free, or whether it was where you were free to shoot black people and Indians and get away with it because it was free.
It was illegal to be black in the state of
You
Oregon.
couldn't be in Cottage Grove in the 50s after dark. You had to, if you played at their clubs, at their bars, you had to go up to Eugene to stay the night. You weren't allowed to stay in
But that is not why you're
Right.
sharing this.
So
That's all kind of background, right?
That's the background because turns out a show was at the African American Museum of Hanford workers who were part of the Manhattan Project.
Say that again.
The Black Hanford workers who were part of building the Hanford Bomb Works in 1946, 45, 46, to instantly make this amazing, humongous creation like Lord of the Rings thing of making plutonium in about 7 reactors, enough to make the bomb to drop on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And it was particularly the Nagasaki bomb was finished and made there. And then after that, it became the place where the bombs for the Cold War proceeded to be. All the plutonium was being generated that was going into all those missiles.
So at Hanford, you're saying that there was a segregated work unit?
That's what it turned out to be. I was like, oh, this should be interesting. And sure enough, they called it, even the blacks there called it like something like Hanford, Alabama, or something like that. They found it was so scary or racist and segregated. It was not a pleasant work site. It wasn't pleasant for anyone. It was very windy. And a lot of people quit, but they didn't want to quit because they wanted jobs. And they made it really nice for the white people. They had all these movies and things to keep them there. It was very high pay for technical things. It was higher pay than anywhere else in the country practically because they really wanted to get a lot of workers there fast. And as it turns out, they just used the black people for servants, and they were only allowed to be cooking and doing laundry and labor of slave work like digging ditches and stuff. And plenty of them were skilled carpenters. They didn't call that a skill. And they paid them labor for when they did carpentry. They were building the buildings for the housing for all these like 40,000 people who were moved in there within 2 months or something to start building this thing, and they pulled it off. And they moved out the 300 people who were farmers in the town of Hanford, and they said you had to be gone within 30 days, and they built this big thing. So
they kicked out 300 people and told them to leave within 30 days.
Within 30 days. Government needed it for the war effort.
Wow.
Yeah, and so people just did because there was no choice. And and now
I wish they had.
But what was going on at the time was this Roosevelt attempt to irrigate the desert out there of the Columbia Plateau and turn it into a garden by making the big, huge Cooley Dam at the very top of the northern end of the plateau near Spokane, and gathering up the water and then piping it in a grid of pipelines and canals across down through central Washington down to Oregon, and possibly even go further into Oregon, but mainly it was all of Washington, eastern Washington, to the Idaho border. And that would be for gardening for America. And then, as it turned out, a funny twist on it is that it turned out the wheat grew fine without irrigation. And the dry farming of wheat turned out to be what goes on out there, and they didn't even need this irrigation thing. But the big project created the water in a place and the electricity that was perfect for the bomb to be able to be made there, because you needed a ton of electricity.
Turns out they didn't need the water. You're telling me they didn't know they didn't need the water. They knew.
I don't know. It was an idea of a local guy from Moses Lake. Right near Hanford is this kind of funny desert town of Moses Lake. And it's the Scablands. It's where the Missoula flood many years ago in geologic time dropped out a chunk out of the Ice Age times and came flying down, scouring that area. So it's got these weird canyons and things like that as it heads to the sea. And it busted through the Columbia Gorge, through the Cascades, and it made its way to Portland, bang, around Mount St. Helens, up and around Mount Olympus in the Olympic, Tillamook Mountain. Anyways, it gets to Astoria, and finally it gets out there to the sea. And it created this channel of the Columbia River that now Hanford is stuck on a loop of it right above Richland, Washington, and it's about 10 miles above the Quad Cities. If you add up the Quad Cities of Pasco, Kennewick, Richland, and Quad Cities, Tri-Cities, Kennewick, Pasco, Kennewick, Pasco, and this one is of the coast.
Mhm.
But anyways, 250,000 people there. Anyways, it doesn't matter except to say that it was kind of desolate land, and yet it's surrounded by tribes of the Yakima reservation, and but I want to bring it back down to the water concerns of the river Columbia goes to Portland, and along the way it's used for irrigation for the fruit of Washington State. Up along in the Yakima area, just 20 miles, 30 miles, 40 miles to the west of Hanford, where the winds do blow, and then the water comes down and is used for irrigation in the Yakima River. That's the big wine country, plus a lot of dairies and stuff out there, but all kinds of those famous Washington wines. So personally, I don't want to be mean about the economy and all, but if I were you, I would read the label, and if it says apples from Washington, I'd only get them if they were not from the Columbia Plateau, because of the way the winds blow all around there.
Well,
and
what
the
does that
irrigation.
mean? Would it say the Columbia Plateau? If it
No,
was
you got to look at a map. I went to the Dairy Mart, and they were emphasizing at Dairy Mart that they were doing fresh stuff. They tried all kinds of fresh lettuce, and it was from Pasco, and fresh apples, it was from Wenatchee. Each of these are within 2 hours of wind-blown fallout
Wow.
from Hanford that has been operating since the 40s and has spewed many times. These nuclear power plants released stuff. They were doing experiments at Hanford many times. Radioactive materials have gone out in a gaseous way of radioactive iodine gas. That was the Green Run, and it gave 4,000 people have joined together in a class action suit with thyroid cancer and their families, because some of them died.
4,000 people.
4,000, they're getting nowheres, and they've been doing it
Out
for
of
10
how
years.
many? Out of a population of how many?
Well, this is the whole area between Richland and Spokane got the Green Run of they released fresh
so that's
radioactive
just thyroid
iodine
cancer,
gas.
But that's a thyroid cancer. That's not like
Right.
all the other.
That was only Green Run people who had it from
Right.
that time period. They ate the cereal with the milk on it that the cows in Spokane of the dairy that they got at the general store or at this corner store had that radioactive stuff in it that week. And it was only alive for that week, and they drank it that week, and it went to their thyroid that week, and they grew up, and they're my age, they're 60 now, the Green Run kids. And they got thyroid cancer all over. If you find anyone from Spokane who doesn't have thyroid cancer who's my age, I'll be amazed.
You can look at the camera.
Okay.
You can talk.
Yeah, so that's just the truth of living in Spokane, is that most people there have thyroid cancer who are middle-aged and older. And you just get it taken out, and you just get pills, and that's what everybody's used to doing. And
you mean large portions of the population?
If not everybody.
What's the oncology?
Probably half the population has had their thyroids out, I would bet.
In what city?
Spokane.
Wow.
Yeah, because that's where the Green Run went.
And
plop.
they just accept it. They just accept it.
And
as
all the
normal.
kids had milk that week, and the milk had it on it because the gas landed on the grass, and the cows ate the grass, and it went into the milk, and it was fresh milk, and went to them while it was still radioactive.
Well, why are these people not up in arms over all of this?
Well, they haven't gotten anywhere, so we need to join together in an alliance and support them. The downwinders.com is what you find those 4,000 people. That was 10 years ago. They're probably, most of them or half of them are dead or something by now. Their families are joining in this group, and try to support them, give them money, find lawyers to help them. I don't know why, but the government keeps saying you can't prove it. But at this point, there's little monikers and little ways to attach.
That's a complete false lie. That's a complete false lie. From my research from Dr. John Goffman, these markers, it's very easy to track it. If they look, that's the issue, is they're just not looking. In fact, there was an interview this week that was at the Japanese Foreign Correspondents Club, right? And they were talking, this lady was talking about how, let me see if I can get this going on better. They were talking about the new studies show that, this was astounding to me. This scientist from Germany literally said that prior to their studies, they did not believe that radiation affected the brain. which we know Dr. John Goffman and Arthur Tamplin did studies on that, and it did affect the brain, which tells me that our scientific community, the information from John Goffman is being suppressed, and all they're getting is information that radiation doesn't cause harm. Because this lady and her group from Germany thought that they were bringing in new information that radiation, low-level radiation, uncategorically causes harm.
To the brain?
To the brain, it gives you tumors, it causes brains in the tumor, it causes dysfunction in the brain, it hurts children. And
tiredness, right? And the blood gets its lack of white blood cells, and then it gets its lack of red blood cells,
right.
both.
It's actually probably the biggest suicidal. I mean, they're committing hara-kiri on everybody, to be honest. They're just killing us all with this nuclear pollution. So,
yeah,
it's very stunning.
So, I'm going to bring this back because I want people to get out their Washington State maps and not eat the food from around Hanford in the Columbia Plateau. And someday and I could just list the towns, but Walla Walla onions, don't buy the real ones from Walla Walla. That's 1 hour to the east, downwind exactly. The town, big progressive college town with like 4 colleges in it, and it's short distance. They'll have no warning. There'll be about 5 minutes warning or something like that. I mean, if the wind is blowing strong, they're 50 miles due downwind.
So eat nothing from Walla Walla, Washington.
Well, there's Walla Walla onions that are big, beautiful onions. Get the ones that were grown somewhere else where they got the seeds originally from Walla Walla, and they grew them somewhere else.
Wow.
And don't get the produce from around there. Beets and sugar beets are all in that area, and the Snake River, where the winds do blow towards Des Moines, down from through... it goes into Moscow, Idaho, and it blows that direction, past Walla Walla to Moscow, Idaho. And so that's wheat. And lucky for you guys, wheat from the Columbia Plateau turns out to be getting sold to the Chinese.
Lucky for us.
We don't eat it as much as the Chinese are eating our Columbia Plateau wheat.
That's sad.
But it's 17% of our country's wheat is grown in the Columbia Plateau within 1 or 2 hours distance of being ruined by a meltdown at Hanford, at the Columbia Generating Station. And just to put the update on it, in the last 5 years, fault lines were found that are 10 miles deep underneath Hanford that reach all the way from the coast. Under the big, huge volcanic cascades. This is a big thing of the plate tectonics. And we're awaiting an overdue, huge coastal Cascadia subduction zone earthquake of the north-south crack, where the ocean plate is diving its nose underneath the continental plate, and that's what created the Cascades and the Sierra Mountains, was where it dives down and melts. It shoots up as volcanoes. On the other side of that is Hanford, and they were saying the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake will be subdued or muffled by those Cascade Mountains, so not to worry at Hanford. That was 10 years ago. But
that's bull.
2013,
that's not
Sandy
right.
Doughton in the Seattle Times wrote an article in October about the fault lines that I'm talking about. And my question to the geologists is, when the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake happens, and all of the cities like Vancouver, British Columbia, Bellingham, Seattle are all going to be demolished. 50% of the structures will be broken and fallen onto each other, and people are going to be underneath there and stuff. And all the way down to Arcata, California. The entire coast, that's 15 minutes after the earthquake happens, of a 5-minute big earthquake, 9.2, bigger than anything our country's had yet. And it finally is going to release after 300 years, since the year 1700. And it's going to be a big one. And then 50% of the buildings are going to be down, or the structures, the bridges, the highways, the everything. Well, then they're saying not to worry because Hanford's beyond the Cascades. Well, this new information points that the energy of the deep down, 10 miles down, has a crack that goes right to Hanford. So that that nuclear power plant was constructed for previous knowledge of how strong it could be, plus They neglected to put this in the request for an extension of their operating permit, and they never mentioned the fault lines that happen to be there, which are creating a 3.5 about every month. And just north of there, 100 miles only, is where the epicenter by Wenatchee of the biggest one in 1870 that was felt in San Francisco.
Lou, isn't that enough, though, to get their license revoked?
Well, I should think by their cheating and not mentioning it.
Yeah.
And it was discovered by a geologist from
So
Kennewick
what's the
who
process?
read the thing and said, wait a minute, they didn't mention any of the earthquake fault lines.
You think we could get a petition going to the NRC to say that should be revoked?
Yes, until they confirm, which they won't be able to, until they confirm that it's safe because of this new information about the faults, it should be shut down safely. If it turns out that it's safe, they can turn it on again, but they won't find it safe, so they won't get to turn it on again. That's what I think, because it is not safe. It will spew into the air the dust that will blow in any direction the wind's blowing, and it blows mainly to the east, to Washington, D.C., to New York City, to everything like that. And then it'll go around America, it'll hit Europe.
Wow.
And it's just what Fukushima did. Fukushima hit us, we're going to hit Fukushima too. And in 26 days or 30 days, this Hanford mess will have spewed itself all around the northern hemisphere and raised the radiation permanently.
Wow. Wow.
But some of that will die down within, the half-life time of various radionuclides that are in the dust. Some of it is pieces of cement.
So what do people do up in Seattle? What would you recommend that these people do?
Move.
People that are watching.
No, actually, the truth about Seattle is, okay, that brings me to this map.
Okay. She
This-
loves maps.
I
She's
do.
actually a map maker.
A map maker. Okay, so here is the waterway.
Here, you want to sit here, River?
Oh, wait a minute. I'll go like this.
Just sit there and
Oh, yeah, okay, I'll hold it still. It's hard to see. Let's see. Turn it like
kind of
this.
hard to coordinate that.
I want it to get into the plane of focus. Okay. Bellingham, Washington, I think. Down here, Seattle. So, if you consider that over here, this blob of land is the Olympic Peninsula. Oh, this is a good exercise. Here's Port Townsend. And here, in the safety away from the big waves of the ocean, in Puget Sound is Seattle. Down here is Olympia, or Tacoma, and below that is Olympia. And this is a bay with islands and stuff in it that's called Puget Sound. And but the problem is it's all going to be sloshed by the tsunami that will come 15 minutes after that earthquake. And everything up to Bellingham, Washington is expected to, the earthquake fault line actually comes to right here. This big purple thing is Vancouver Island, and it comes to Vancouver Island from Arcata, California. So it will push within 15 minutes, this big tsunami that will get things at their various heights of whether they're up or down, and it will lower the coastal villages a bunch of feet as it drops after it's released, so that the coastline will be flooded forever because it'll be lower. And so many towns and houses and things that were on the coast are going to be covered in water after it. But meanwhile, who's going to care about Hanford when all of these cities are broken and flooded? And nobody's going to care that that big crack went all the way from underneath the Cascades, from here to under this way, and right directly across from Seattle, if you cross into the mountains, is Hanford, on the other side of the Cascades. And you go through Snoqualmie Pass, and you end up at Wenatchee, and then you go down south from there through Ellensburg, the college town, which most of the college kids there don't even know that they are within an hour of wind pollution from a meltdown at Hanford. They don't even know Hanford exists because that college gets money from the Department of Energy to train workers at Hanford, and they dumbing down the students there. It's unbelievable. I spent a week there, and I couldn't believe that hardly anybody knew Hanford even was there who wasn't actually working, getting their schooling to get money from Hanford. And then you go to Yakima, and that's a big agricultural town that is wonderful, big town full of Hispanic, Latino people and the Yakima tribe, and they get along really well, and it's a beautiful town. I like it. And then and it's dangerously close. Anyways, that's just to say that the spewing dust will go in the wind whichever way it's blowing. And Hanford, at that, particularly, I was reminded at the Northwest African American Museum in Seattle that's putting on a show of black workers at Hanford who were part of the bomb effort to make the bomb. And they were not told what they were working on, but no workers were told that. Anyways, they kept describing the windy conditions at Hanford and how harsh it was to live in the desert where it blew so hard, this dust storms like sandstorms, and that workers were wanting to quit all the time. Well, that is blowing the same way the fallout is going to blow from Hanford to Spokane predominantly. It goes northeast mainly, but it also goes straight east, across Boise. Anyways, you can see it on a map. From Richland, just go east, and that's your predominant thing. Pendleton, Oregon, is what I'm concerned about, because I'm going next Wednesday to speak for the wild creatures with Oregon Wild to our Oregon capital, to Salem, on Wednesday, next Wednesday, February 10th, I believe it is.
Yes, it is.
And you can see OregonWild.com or .org, and sign up and register, and they'll help you go to have a meeting with your elected representatives in the Oregon legislature. And I'm going to speak up asking for Pendleton area to be animals to be protected from Hanford, because direct hit of wind blown from there would be death to all of those creatures.
So what do you want them to do to protect them?
I would like them to immediately shut down the Columbia generating station safely in an orderly fashion, so that we're not doing it under a chaotic condition.
The DOE has no money to close down Columbia, no nuclear power.
I don't want to hear it. I don't give a shit. They're going to do it because they have to, because I'm American. And this is America, and this is my country, and they don't run it. I'm a citizen. I run it. And they can't do that to us because we're the citizens. They work for us. And the...
Oh, you are so naive. Like, really.
Okay. We'll go and give them a run for their money.
Yes, we will give them a run for our money.
No,
I like better an idea, this is my thinking,
mm-hmm.
to get a petition to the NRC that we can submit to the NRC to say they lied on their licenses.
I think that alone would shut it down, just to say that.
But we need people, we need numbers. We can
mm-hmm.
get an online petition going
mm-hmm.
that says
Sounds
they
good.
lied on their license to the NRC, and you have to recall their license, relicense.
Yeah, and check it out and give us a report. Don't hide it from us.
Right.
That was a hidden report that had to be found by a geologist. Yeah, that's like irritating. That we can't trust.
Irritating,
It's
yeah.
slightly irritating that we have to hire specialists to find how our government's cheating.
Well, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, its mission is to promote nuclear energy and also...
Industry.
The industry, right. And also to protect public health. So they can't do both. They picked the industry.
Well, I'd like to take that industry word apart, because that dust part I don't like, of industry.
Dust part. Here, look at that. I'm going to look at your photos.
Yeah, but the thing is, the Columbia Generating Station is supposedly run by, and probably is responsible for the big mess that's going to happen, by a consortium of Northwest Public Utilities of rural electric cooperatives. And these are from the little towns. I'm in Lane Electric Co-op up in Oak Ridge, and they're part of around the countryside around Eugene. In Eugene is a huge one, the Eugene Water and Electric Board. These have boards on them, and people can be on the boards. They also are, everybody who pays is a member. Everybody who has a number of an electric meter is a member of the co-op, of these electric co-ops. And you may go to a meeting of the co-op and bring up that you would like to have the Columbia Generating Station shut down because it's unsafe to live in the Northwest near it while it's operating on top of a fault line that's supposed to blow, or a number of fault lines. And that we need to get to the heart of it, of who's responsible to pay for the accidents and the ruined crops and the wineries that are going to be ruined and the wheat fields that are going to be ruined and the shipping industry on the Columbia River of the barges, they're going to be ruined. There won't be any more exports from our area agriculturally ever if this happens. And that's the end of it. Now, why does our government get to do something and say that, and then put it in the hands? They made it for making bombs. Then they put it in the hand. Then they said it was atoms for peace, and JFK gave it his blessing. And it's been around a while, this nuke. And it was called Whoops before because it was Washington Public Utilities Services, and they were trying to always make.
They sort of had to change that name.
Yeah,
Whoops.
Not such a good
Whoops
name.
is probably not the best name to give a nuclear power plant. Whoops.
Ooh.
Whoops. Right.
So now it's the Columbia Generating Station, run by Energy Northwest, which is just an arm of like Bechtel and the Department of Energy, and they sell all their electricity they make at this to Bonneville Power Administration, which doesn't say the United States in its name, but it is the United States government. Yet it's calling itself a public utility. So I think we need to consider what bullshit they're trying to tell us, that we are members of a co-op and members of a public utility, but we have no say because the public government is the army, and they want to do nuclear missiles to be powerful against other people. So they're going to keep nuclear power plants going as much as they can because that's what generates the plutonium for more missiles, is the nuclear power plants. They lied to us for a long time. Helen Caldicott and John Goffman and others told us it's not true. Nuclear power is part of nuclear war. They're not two separate things. The operating of an electric generating nuclear power plant ends up with material that is then further processed for plutonium. Yet, you end up with these fuel rods that are stored next to every nuclear power plant. And Hanford was shut down as a bomb-making place with leaking tanks of gooey, toxic and radioactive bomb-making waste, is in these tanks that are leaking presently into the underground cracks going into the Columbia that they thought would take 1,000 years. That wouldn't even be okay. And yet it's only taken 50 years to reach the Columbia River from like a mile into the complex. And thanks, that went pretty fast. And they didn't even know it. Well, how about shake it a little? It has a 3.5 earthquake about every 2 months or something around there. And that'll make that stuff go along the cracks underground, move around. And so they didn't know what was going to happen. They decided on the space within 2 weeks to make that bomb thing happen. They sent these Harvard team out of 2 guys. They saw that it was a remote spot with plenty of electricity and just had 300 farmers to throw off the land. And so it was a good choice for what they were doing. But they didn't know or have the time for the geologic check at the time. All the pioneers came in and they said, this land is amazing. No earthquake, no nothing. Because it was holding it up for this big one. It hadn't had an earthquake since 1700 at 9 in the morning on January 26th, I think it was. And so it's bottled it up. It's a big one. The other parts of the country, California and stuff, are releasing it. The San Andreas Fault releases it more often. It's the same kind of earthquake, but it releases it oftentimes. And anyways, in this, right across from Seattle in the Puget Sound, I could show it to you on the map again. There we go. See, it says Bellevue on one side. Well, you go the other side towards the Olympics, and you're into the water, and then a little bit south there, Bremerton. That's where a third of our country's nuclear submarines are. at the Bangor Nuclear Submarine Base. And there's the Hood Canal, is a waterway canal that's inside of this lacework of islands and stuff of the Olympic Peninsula. And you can drive down here to the bottom to Tacoma and get back onto I-5. Otherwise, it's where the tsunami is going to come sloshing in from the ocean, slosh into all these cities and places, and then drain it back out to the sea, taking everything with it it can. And not anybody's expected to live who goes out, because you'll be smashed inside of everything. And all of those parts of nuclear submarines will be smashed into Seattle and dragged up into the Seattle areas, the ship canal, the this and the that. And Lake Washington and Lake Union is all going to be mixing and matching all kinds of stuff. And it's going to push it up into Everett, and it's going to keep going up into here. It's going to go up to Vancouver, Canada. What right do we have to push our nuclear submarines broken with nuclear plutonium in the missiles and uranium and MOX fuel with plutonium in it operating inside of every nuclear submarine is a nuclear power plant that operates it, plus nuclear bombs of missiles are on many of them. There's fake ones on them all, and there's real ones on them all in there, so that we couldn't have bad soldiers stealing them and stuff. And so anyways, it's dangerous in Puget Sound because our country has nuclear submarines based in a tsunami zone. So I don't know, we're going to get 5 minutes to 10 minutes warning. If the crack starts opening up and releasing down in California by Arcata, of course there's nuclear waste stored by the Arcata closed down nuclear power plant that will get sloshed. But anyways, we'll get 10 minutes to 20 minutes, 15 minutes warning at the most up in Seattle. And so you can move these submarines maybe out really quickly out to the ocean in 15 minutes, I don't know. And then the crack will hit. And if you're where the tsunami is coming, you can float through it and over it if you're in a boat. So maybe they can get out in enough time, but they don't know where it'll release. It could release right across from Seattle, and then there'll be no time at all. And it'll be 15 minutes, and that'll be that. So, Cascadia is everything that has these ferns and cascade mountain type of plants growing, of fir trees, cedar, ferns, wet, a lot of rain. We're all the same bioregion, and it goes all the way up to Alaska. And you can go up to there and find the same things to eat. And keep going up here inside of the canal between, or the Strait of Georgia between Vancouver Island, and go on up there. And then you're in Alaska. So this is to say we're all in Cascadia, and we need to unite on the ocean side of the Pacific Northwest as Cascadians, with Canadians joining with Americans of Alaska and Washington and Oregon to protect us from nuclear submarines that are going to slosh around in our waters. And if that Hanford nuke blows, it's going to release into the Columbia, and it's going to go past Portland, and it'll go out to the sea in Astoria.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Well, if the power plant is still operating at the time that earthquake happens, and it breaks, there'll be no stopping it, and a lot of radiation is going to go out into the sea. We just had a whale beaching. We have a lot of the radiation from Fukushima came last summer to the Oregon shores. It's made its way around to Alaska and back over to us in like 4 years. And there's a big mass of it, and there's a blob of it covers all of California of warm water that is 300 feet deep, that is called the blob. The occipital decadal oscillator something or other. that they're saying is part of the El Nino thing and is mixing with El Nino to give us the drought that we had last summer, and we're going to have another one this summer. But we had some good snow. But wow, so Lonnie says the blob. I got this news on it from the Alsea Fishermen's Association, who reported about how it got so warm last summer that the fish hatcheries had 53,000 baby fish die at the Alsea one just from it getting too warm.
It's not too warm. They're saying it's too warm. They're not testing for radiation. They are not testing for radiation. It's radiation. You cannot have a nuclear volcano pouring nuclear contamination into the Pacific nonstop for 5 years and have it not affect the Pacific.
Yeah. And some people say, oh, Chernobyl was really bad. Fukushima isn't so bad. But it's still going on.
Well, Fukushima is ongoing. Chernobyl got stopped within a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And Chernobyl was only a 1/3 core meltdown. This is 4 nuclear melt-throughs, 4 Chernobyl syndrome nuclear volcanoes that are still ongoing to this very day. Trillions, gigatrillions, in fact, of becquerels. We're not even talking billions. It's gigatrillions now.
Whatever. I don't understand numbers very well, but I just know it's not right, and I want to go back in time.
Well, I want to move forward in time. I want us to have children. I want our children to have a future.
Yeah. And I have a granddaughter who I really love, and I can't bear the idea of Muriel having inhalation of this crap, and that she's going to get cancer in 20 years after she inhales the dust. And if she has kids, they could be mutants because of a dust she inhales from the Hanford nuke blowing and making the dust in the air like Chernobyl did. It went in the air and it landed on all those people in the Ukraine, and their government didn't tell them either. And the government's not going to warn us and not going to tell us. Just like the Japanese government didn't tell them. The Russian government didn't tell them. Our U.S. government doesn't plan to tell us. And we've got to shut it down for our own safety. Our government is not looking for our behalf. They're looking to be powerful warmongers. And we don't know what the heck they're doing, but we can still protect ourselves. And they're not caring for us. We're American citizens, but we're not in the army. And they're doing an army thing that could hurt us a lot.
Yeah, they're not interested in saving humanity. Let's just be very clear.
Yeah, and everybody has their philosophy. Like, some people think the government's trying to kill most of the Americans and most of the people of the world because there's too many people. And so they're doing chemtrails and they're killing us off with different things so that they have the antidotes for some special elite that somewheres. Now, I don't know if George Bush is there, but if he is, I don't want to be there anyways. And some fancy Ayn Rand little household in the mountains of Colorado or something, where they're going to survive through the nuclear holocaust that they're bringing about. I mean, why does Dick Cheney want the Israelis to be approved by Americans and empowered to bomb Iran with nuclear bombs? Why does he want this? I don't understand it. I don't get it, and why should anybody want to do such a thing? I don't get it. Why he brought together 4 or 5 months ago all the possible Republican candidates in a fancy hotel with a friend of his over in Las Vegas, and they were all told, he was the keynote speaker, and they were told they could have any issues they wanted to run for president, but one thing is common that they should all remember is that Israel should be supported in bombing Iran. And they can do whatever else they want, but we gotta all know that we're going to bomb Iran. I don't want to. And I hope that Dick Cheney doesn't get his way. And I don't know why he's like that. And I think he needs a hug or something. And the Tibetans feel like there's basic goodness inside of everyone, and if someone can find it inside of Dick Cheney, could they give me an email and tell me about it? Because he doesn't seem so nice. And
yeah, he doesn't seem so nice.
Yeah, like maybe our whole world would be saved if Dick Cheney was given a hug, like from Eugene, like a big, like, we love you thing, like Rainbow Family.
I don't think that's how it works. Dick Cheney has no heart.
Well, he has 3 people's hearts.
Right.
He just rips them out and stuffs them in and keeps on going.
I think so. I think
He doesn't die. He just uses people's hearts and keeps going. He looks great. I saw a picture of him. He looks healthy.
Well, he sits underneath a mask. He gets his stuff.
Botox? No, I don't know what he does.
No, he gets this, he gets his blood, changed every single night. He goes into this hyperbolic chamber.
Oh my God.
And they change his blood and they do all this weird stuff.
See, God meant for him to die, and he shouldn't have so much money that he can live. So he's the vice president of Halliburton. And they get all the contracts for the Iran-Iraq war to do all the food, to do all the logistics. And he's vice president. Isn't that conflict of interest? Okay, so I'm going through Colorado Rocky Mountains last summer on Amtrak, and the interpretive guide is describing all these fracking installations we're seeing, and why the train has to wait an hour is because all these oil trains are tanker cars get precedence over Amtrak and people to bring this oil that they're sucking out of the earth. And then they're talking about the Halliburton did this, and the government joined up this experiment to try fracking with nuclear bomb inserted inside of a cavern in the Rocky Mountains to melt all the oil and have it dribble into a trough and come out. And so they blew up an atom bomb. Now, who gets to do that? And what industry gets to have an atom bomb to blow up to test that out? But the oil industry got to through Halliburton, doing fracking of fucking up the water. People getting sick all around the fracking places, throwing up and skin lesions and blech. It's not good. Headaches, like bad headaches around the fracking. And so
the fracking, bad headaches.
But the country gets $2 gas.
So you're going on 46 minutes here, sister.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to keep going?
No, I just wanted to say that I will conclude with saying I want us all to join up together in the Columbia River Basin Stewardship Alliance. And I want to hear, personally, myself, I'm Louisa Hamachek, I want to hear from you by my phone number or by my email.
Give that out.
And my phone number is 541-912-9136. 541-912-9136, or my email, Louisa, Louisa, .ecoarts, ECOARTS, at gmail.com, louisa.ecoarts@gmail.com. And I have started with my friend Lonnie and my dog Betty Boop, the Columbia River Basin Stewardship Alliance, for anybody in the Columbia River Basin, which is everything from Canada, British Columbia, it starts up there, to Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming. It comes from Yellowstone.
Or anybody who wants to join in and stop
Yeah,
in this.
because
We will take all takers.
Yeah, and
it's anybody who wants to actively engage in this process of closing the Columbia Generating Station.
And we start with that, and I want to hear what each person's environmental problem is in their town, and we'll put out a newsletter. We'll write a letter to each other and say what it is. We'll know what it is. We'll visit with each other, and we'll say, really? And we'll take pictures and go back to our town and
right, and
tell them about
information is powerful, as we learned with the Westlake landfill and the Coldwater Creek people. That gets people moving, and
And friendship is great. We need to be friends with each other now.
Yeah.
Friendship, like hugs.
Hugs.
Dinner at each other's houses. Fun, food.
That's
Not like
Thomas
clinical,
Ackerman
not
says.
like science out there, but we are scientists because we've gone to school
Because
and
we
we
have
can
to
study.
be. We have
And
to
yeah,
be.
we have to get the basics to understand their bullshit. The government
Yeah.
is trying to trick us all the time, and we have to get around them. They're the industrial people.
Technologists, as John Goffman called it. So.
Yeah, okay, well, I love you because you're you.
And you're listening. Bye, you
Yeah,
guys.
bye.
This is Lonnie. We'll see you guys later. Put your courage feet on, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.